taking advantage where they should not have.
You know, I hear that, and I find, and that's one of the things I like about Culture Shock Radio, is that frequently we can agree to disagree, but many times we're just going to agree. The federal government, regardless of who is in power, stepping up to be able to strip away freedoms is completely wrong, and people have to be held accountable. And the one group, you know, and of course, IRS is being investigated by Congress, but I'll tell you, Jeff, the group that is not being investigated by anybody, that you only hear about here at Culture Shock Radio, is the American Psychiatric Association. They're labeling half of Americans mentally ill. It seems like there's a disorder for everything except having a clear mind and being a traditionalist. It seems like everything else is labeled as mentally ill. What are your thoughts on this new DSM-5 in the American Psychiatric Association saying that half of us are crazy?
Well, half of us may be crazy, but that half is not diagnosable, if you know what I mean, right? I think we all have a little bit of crazy in us. I like to say I may not know karate, but I know crazy. And I look at it every day in the mirror. But what the American Psychiatric Association seems to be doing here with this DSM-5, I think this is going to explode. This is going to be a weapon of mass destruction because people are going to start looking at what may be the cause of so many new mental illnesses being diagnosed. That number you gave could be even a conservative number. We have to look at, is there a possibility that the pharmaceutical companies are involved here, that lawyers are involved here, that other medical groups are involved here? Because, Dwight, you know it. The more we diagnose, that means the more medications we put out there, the more money goes in the pockets of a lot of these mental health providers. This is scary.
Well, it's very scary because, again, according to research, just 8 years ago, 6%, that's single digits, that's 6% of Americans were diagnosed with a mental illness, a diagnosable mental illness. And now the American Psychiatric Association is saying half. And while, tongue-in-cheek, people say, well, I know some crazy people, but honestly, you can't go from 6% to 50% unless you step back and say there's a lot more going on. And both of us as mental health professionals are looking at this saying the American Psychiatric Association needs to be held accountable. If we can hold the IRS accountable, we have to hold the APA accountable as well. Half of Americans mentally ill, not so.
Well, it's interesting because very early on, Dwight, and you heard the buzz on the DSM-5, I don't think I've read one thing in the news, on the internet, especially as to having a very good or positive reception of the DSM-5. Everything that I'm reading, people are complaining. People think it's a travesty. In some ways, I hate to say it, Prince sang it. I'm so excited. I don't know why. Maybe it's because we're all going to die. There is some excitement as far as I'm going to keep my day job. There's some excitement here for me, Dwight, because I think this is going to be one of the most political DSMs ever put out. I think it may end up being so controversial. They may actually, and don't quote me on this, but I said it on Culture Shock Radio. They may pull back that DSM-5 for a revision as the American public, especially mental health providers, begin to consume this publication.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen. It's so outrageous that the vast majority of level-headed individuals are going to say, you know what, we've had enough, American Psychiatric Association. In fact, on today's program, we're going to talk about how over-medicating people, how letting psychiatrists and psychologists be able to run the legal system is changing America. And in fact, it is redefining America and not in a positive way.